Yo, what's up, Super Fun Force? Captain Games to here, and today for TCG Thursdays, I'm going to go over some of my 5 Blitz deck tech. This deck is definitely competitive, but as usual, you can play with it for fun, casually. And it's great to get into the game if you're a new player and you like the character of Fi, being a ninja, fire elemental, and all that fun stuff. With a new set Uprising, it's a great character because, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what it needs to do. At the same time, it teaches you a lot of great fundamentals and a good amount of decision making, for sure. That being said, if you're a veteran and you want to either start getting into ninjas, Fi is great because, again, Fi is pretty powerful. Not as complex, I would say, as Katsu. And then in Blitz, I think Fi is probably the best ninja beside Benji. I don't think Katsu and Ira are as strong. I think Katsu is a better version of Ira at this point if you were to play Blitz. And I think when it comes to Classic Constructed, I think Fi and Katsu are pretty equal, and they do similar yet very different and unique things. So without getting too much into the comparison, I'm just going to say that Fi, once again, wants to go wide and wants to take advantage of attacks that get higher up on the chain link when they're Draconic, because he has a special talent. Okay, so Fi is really cool. You can put a Phoenix Flame into your graveyard at the beginning of the game, which is good because you have a lot of ways to bring this back to your hand immediately. So that's a nice little thematic touch, but definitely affects gameplay. And then, as you can see here, you can play up to one ability a turn from his hero power here, which lets you return already a Phoenix Flame from the graveyard to your hand. And as you can see, it costs one less one less resource for each Draconic chain link you control. So as you can imagine, it's basically free every turn as long as you have 3 Draconic chain links. Alright, so that's Fi in a nutshell. And basically, the weapon we use is his trademark weapon, Searing Ember Blade. And again, it's very easy to give this go again, because if this itself is a second attack on your chain link, then boom, it's already go again, and it hits pretty good. 3 damage, 2 resources is the solid ratio. For the equipment, Flame Scale Furnace is nice because it's a 2 blocking temper. Not completely necessary if you're playing on this budget, or on a budget and you don't have access to this legendary. Then you can find something else perhaps that can block for 2, or maybe you want to use like a Vest of the First Fist to give you extra resources if you need it. You can always use like a iron rod or iron hide. One of the two that lets you either sacrifice it or pay to make it increase its defense to 2. So that's viable options right there. Now when it comes to the masks, I put both up here, but I would just go with Mask of Momentum at this point. And again, if you don't have access to this legendary, this is still nice because although this is not as necessary as for, let's say, with Katsu or someone like, that wants to get a specific chain link combo card, this still lets you get something that you might want when you need it to make your turn better. You have a lot of cards that cost 2 or less, so as you get better with understanding what each card does, excuse me, and as you also know what works well against other decks, this becomes more powerful, for sure. Now the Snapdragon Scalers are also nice. I mean, there's also the there's other ninja equipment, but just start with this because basically if there's ever a turn where you can't go again, this basically is a good option, and also allows you to put in flex and other cards to your deck. But there are other options for the ninja legs. I just go to this for default, but I know they just released a new one. I think it was called Tide something, and then there's the one for Crucible. So just basically whatever you have, you can flex in from this point. Lastly, Tiger Stripe Shuko is also really good because, as you can see here, it has a 2 block, but it only has Blade Break. But if you're able to pull off 2 attacks at least, right, that have a 2 or less base, the second one is going to get +1 damage. Can be prevented. So there you go. Again, what's nice about him is I don't think you need any of these legendaries to be competitive. Like the Mask, I know the Flame Scale and the Tiger Stripe are probably all expensive. But you can definitely use any of the alternatives out there, however you feel best fits your style. Like, do you need extra defense? You can use one of the gauntlets. Of course, you can also have the sideboarded rune blade stuff. Obviously, I didn't put them here, but when you start playing competitive, you can at least sideboard equipment. So you want to put like a full rune blade suite here and maybe adjust accordingly, because if you go up against Kano, you might want to try to get 3 slots in. If you go up against like Viserai or Chain, you might want to have at least 1, if not 2. But that's how I would do my sideboard here. Finally, let's look at the cards. So we want to have a predominance of red cards. So again, I got the Blaze Headlong. I'm just going to go through these really quick. Brand with Cinderclaw, Breaking Scale, or excuse me, Breaking Points. And essentially here, almost everything is free. The only thing that's expensive is the Engulfing Flame Wave. This costs 1, and I believe Mounting Anger costs 1. Or maybe Rise from the Ashes, let's see. Rise Up costs 1. And even Searing Touch. Now, it's good to put the Rupture cards in here, because what's nice is, again, if you can get to that 4 links, these cards will obviously do like a bonus. So for example, this will just basically get 2 damage. Searing Touch is amazing. It's basically direct damage that's free, and it can be blocked, right? You have to actually prevent it with Quell or with something that, prevents damage from the Guardian side or something, right? And like this, for example, here, if you can get 2 Phoenix Flames, then hey, you can maybe get this Dominate with +3 for 6. If not, the nice thing is, even though this deck is very aggressive, you still have the option to pivot onto turns where you want to defend. Maybe you don't want to take the full effect of a Crush, or maybe you just want to reduce damage. Well, if you want to block, physical damage, then it's good to be able to block with 3. Obviously, I think the Mounting Anger blocks for 2. I think so does Engulfing. Yeah, so you do have some 2 stuff. But Searing Touch blocks for 3, so yeah. And essentially what happens here is that what's nice is when you play Fi, you can basically kind of custom your combo and your line of play. With this build, it's pretty easy to make sure you always can do something optimal. Like if you're able to hold on to a 4-card hand, you can do some amazing things, right? A lot of the stuff here is pretty much straightforward, like a lot of it already has Go Again, and you just kind of already know, like, hey, Chain Link 4 or higher, Breaking Point. If you play this first, maybe you only have 2 cards in your hand and you want to play this first or something, you can still go, Breaking Point into your Snapdragons or something. Flame Call, and even what I noticed too is that with a lot of the cards right now, you don't necessarily have to always take advantage of these on-hit effects. Like Mounting Anger is pretty awesome because you can banish a card, right? And then basically that card is going to come back with a +1 bonus. And then if you can do that, right? So in other words, you want to hit with this early on with Go Again, like that's an amazing line of play. You can just custom that to anything. Phoenix Flames are just, super utility because you can get them and play them when you want, either with your ability later on, or if you start off with something like, Rise from the Ashes. So you already have 2 here, red and blue, and then also the Rising Resentment. The nice thing to have these blues in here is for either if you have to have some kind of like pitch against arcane damage from Kano, but since these are all like 1 or 2 attack, right? You can almost always use these with your Tiger Stripe Shuko, right? And also it might allow you to get a little bit more of a poke in and then threaten something with the Mask of Momentum when you get to that third or higher chain link in a row to hit, right? So that's also really good. And then the one little tech here that I think everyone should be aware of is the Art of War. Amazing card always, and especially for decks that are going wide. That's where Art of War really shines, right? And this deck is basically one of the best, if not, the best when it comes to going wide. So Art of War usually belongs in most Ninja decks. Not always, but this deck, I think it's almost an auto-include. So this might be one of the more expensive cards that you would kind of quote-unquote have to have if you want to play something that goes super wide. Because you're generally going to want to do +1 to all attacks, right? The first option, and then the last option, draw 2. So you kind of net 1 card. Cool thing is, even though this deck right now does not really want to play defense reactions, you can still use this in a pinch where it's sitting in your arsenal and maybe they're coming in with like a Command and Conquer, or you're just not expecting them to have as much damage and attacks that they are doing on their turn. So now you can also get more value from all of your cards if you want to just pivot into a defense turn. You can Art of War, and then now you can give all your attack action cards +1 defense. Pretty much everything is an attack action card except for this, and like, Rise from the Ashes, or I think there's only one more, maybe just your... No, they're basically all attack cards except for Rise from the Ashes. So essentially now all your hand, everything starts to defend for like 3 or 4 now. And then you can even net another card. So that way if you're, holding 4 cards, you banish 1. Now you're up to, 5 cards. Well, obviously you have to pitch 1, so you're probably only holding 4 again. But still, now you're holding 4 cards. You've Art of War. And now anything you play from your hand is going to have an additional defense. So you can really a pivot to a good defensive turn. So that's pretty much the strategy behind this deck. The only thing that I would recommend is as you playtest it more and as the meta evolves, because I'm also just starting to get a lot of Fi games in, letting my friends play it and I'm playing them. You might find yourself needing to flex a little bit into reactions because you'll have access to Flick Flax, and then there's always the tried and true Sink Belows and Fate Foreseen. If you feel like you are having trouble against decks that run a lot of attack reactions, maybe Warriors or Guardians with Pummel, and the only other thing I see is maybe the Prism or the Dromai matchup could maybe be problematic. At least you have enough Go Again where you can take out all of their auras if they're playing them. The only thing that I wonder about and want to know more of is if this will have difficulty against something like a Turbo Herald deck from Prism that just wants to attack you with nonstop 6, 7, 8 attack, plus Phantasms every turn, because you don't have right now attacks of 6 or higher to break the Phantasms. So that would be the only deck I would feel might be the most trouble right off the bat. So again, as I do more testing, that could be possibly compensated for by maybe giving you some attacks in here that will use, the ability to break a Phantasm, right? So there you guys go, though. I think that what makes trading card games fun, especially Flesh and Blood, is to, definitely see what other people are playing with the hero, like the deck, like what I'm building here, and then, of course, customize it yourself. Maybe just try this deck out, play it as much as you can against all the other heroes, and then you can start to see what needs to be changed based on how you feel your style of play is and based on what you think you're seeing a lot of in the meta. Like, again, if you're seeing a lot of Prisms, you're seeing a lot of, Illusion, Phantasm stuff, then yeah, maybe you can take a look and say, well, I need to cut out, 4, 6 cards or something to start putting in ways to break Phantasm. Maybe you're seeing a lot of Warriors, a lot of Pummel decks coming out from like Bravo or Oldham, and you're like, man, I don't want to get pummeled anymore, so I need to start putting in some defense reactions, So that to me is the greatest and most enjoyable way to play Flesh and Blood and card games in general. And then of course, if you take this into a competitive tournament, then you can once again do some research and based on what you think is going to be popular, make the call on how you want to adjust your Fi to not only make sure it keeps doing what it needs to do to win, but to have at least somewhat of a tech preparation against what the meta could be holding forth. So there you guys go. Again, if you really, really like Fi and Ninjas and you want to make this one of your main decks, then this is a great list to start building from. All right, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. What you'll be playing. I did a video last week where I was playing this, or my friend was playing this against me as I was teaching him the game. So, you can take a look at that. But in the future, as he gets better at Flesh and Blood, you'll probably see him playing it a lot more, or, I might just play other people, or I might even use this deck myself. So there you guys go. Let me know in the comments what you think. And again, Flesh and Blood's a fantastic game to just play as something that is more of like generic fantasy, but it blends all kinds of stuff. You have like kind of like medieval Western fantasy, but then you also have now a little bit more on like the Asian side, Japanese, Chinese, samurais, ninjas, and it's kind of blending in, I guess, the best of like it's almost like a D&D of card games. I'll probably say this a lot just to emphasize it for people who watch my videos for the first time, but it's kind of like the D&D of TCGs, you know. I guess Magic is kind of like that, but you know, Magic, it's like, it's more of when you see the Kamigawa block. To me, Magic feels more like medieval and like just, you know, fantasy, whereas only, you know, Kamigawa blocks add a little bit more diversity to it. This game, I feel like, brings Legend of the Five Rings, like maybe 40% of Legend of the Five Rings, and then 60% with like traditional medieval, like Lord of the Rings fantasy, and you know, again, medieval Game of Thrones, you know, orcs and stuff like that. So a great way to have another outlet to enjoy those types of fantasy genres for sure, guys. All right, thanks a lot. Don't forget, keep your faith safe, pray, spread that love, be positive, be thankful. I'll be coming back at you.